Okay, this is my first attempt at creating a YouTube video. I've tried several times to create content that I might post on Facebook, but I don't know that I'll have the reach that I'm looking for yet, just because, well, a lot of different reasons. But um, here we go. So it's going to be focusing mostly around why learn to learn. So, in a postmodern world, nobody really knows how to define anything in an absolute way outside of a certain context, and then it's short lived and then it's gone. So, it's almost like, well, I mean, why have any common understanding of anything? And on what grounds can we base it, and for how long is it going to exist? So, I come from a very traditional background where um, everything is almost assumed within the framework of scripture to be unquestionably true. And I went to university with that in mind. And studying the sciences, it wasn't too bad because, I mean, I believe that evolution and creationism aren't really mutually exclusive. So I was able to kind of box up evolution, as it were, in my mind outside of what I understood of religion and not really have them conflict in any way. When I went into grad school, I went into the humanities, and that was just a complete shift of worldviews. Like it, it really just literally unpegged me from who I thought I was and what I thought I understood. So, um, understanding now what postmodernism is and how different ideas are basically the result of influential people sort of dominating the media, basically, is kind of what reality is. So, stripping scripture out of what that could be is almost like saying we don't need scripture. Like, we had it for a certain amount of time and we can do without it now. And to some degree, I don't disagree. Like, we've basically used scripture from different, um, because we, for example, the Quran, which was 1400 years ago, it was revealed 1400 years ago, was in a desert context. In Canada, it's in a context where civilization has evolved. Um, Conditions aren't nearly where um, they can be comparable. And so to say that everything that is almost prescribed is relevant is almost like I'd have to understand the context and compare the two and then say, well, how have conditions for travel, for example, changed? That's just one example. So if I was to say I could write all of it off, it wouldn't make sense. But to say that through time we have evolved with some of the ups and downs of what its prescriptions were, and sort of been able to not forget necessarily that it emanated from like one source, even if we went back to maybe the Hindu scriptures, which was like thousands of years ago. Um, it it wouldn't really be a bad thing, as it were, which I think is where we are as like a postmodern world where we don't really know how to fit tradition in necessarily in a kind of broad way. So um, the reason I'm interested in investing in this is because I have almost like no circle of friends and family right now, because going through this struggle, I really needed to kind of pull away and retreat into myself and decide for myself outside of like the peer influence or what the status quo is within certain communities may be that would kind of hold me back from doing this comfortably without the constant conflict of, well, let's convince you that this way is okay. And as much as I do appreciate that, it can be counterproductive, because it's not to say that I'm not a believer in its existence and its validity, but it's almost like I have to have it make sense for myself, and um, not necessarily create an other from my peers who I went to elementary school and high school with, because I don't see them as, morally um, almost unsaved any more than I could be. right? Because I mean, the source is still one. We're still evolved from the same kind of context 1400 years ago. It just evolved around the world in different ways or colors, as it were. So it's really exciting for me to kind of go through this and maybe have an audience, just because I would like some feedback with what people might anticipate this looks like for their children.